Have you ever wondered why some of the kindest people seem to achieve the least success in our world? Why those who faithfully follow the moral precepts taught since childhood often find themselves exploited by those around them? A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good, wrote Machiavelli in The Prince. His words, written 5 centuries ago, still cut to the heart of a painful reality many good people face daily. You were likely taught that kindness, honesty, and generosity would be rewarded. That virtue carries its own reward. But let me ask you this: how many times have you done the right thing only to be taken advantage of? How many times have you watched as those willing to bend the rules surpassed you? This isn't just a modern problem. When Niccolò Machiavelli served the Florentine Republic faithfully for 14 years, his reward was arrest, imprisonment, and torture after the Medici family seized power. From that bitter experience came The Prince, not a handbook for tyrants, but a survival guide for good people in a world that often isn't. I'm not here to tell you to abandon your kindness. Far from it. I'm here to show you how to protect that kindness, how to make it strong enough to survive in a world that too often sees it as weakness. Let me tell you about Michael, a small business owner who prided himself on treating everyone fairly. When a new vendor approached him with a seemingly fantastic offer, Michael accepted on a handshake, paid up front, and never received the promised goods. The vendor had specifically targeted Michael after observing his trusting nature with other business partners. This isn't random. Studies show that exploitative people actively scan for specific behavioral patterns that signal exploitability. They're looking for excess agreeableness, visible discomfort with conflict, and eagerness to please, the very traits we associate with kindness. Think about your own experiences. Have you noticed that certain people seem to repeatedly take advantage of your generosity? Have you ever wondered why they don't treat others the same way? What's happening is what psychologists call selective exploitation. People with manipulative tendencies don't try these tactics with everyone. They specifically target those who've shown they won't push back. Remember that colleague who always dumps their work on you last minute? Or the friend who borrows money without repaying? These aren't accidents. They've learned you're safe to exploit. Men are so simple of mind and so dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful man will always find plenty who are ready to be deceived, Machiavelli observed. He wasn't being cynical. He was describing a pattern he'd witnessed repeatedly in Renaissance politics that continues in offices, friendships, and relationships today. The research confirms this dark pattern. A 2018 study found that individuals scoring high on measures of kindness and cooperation were significantly more likely to be victims of exploitation. Why? Because they made themselves easy targets by 1. Assuming others shared their ethical standards, 2. Avoiding conflict even when boundaries were crossed, 3. Continuing to give after receiving nothing in return, 4. Showing visible discomfort with assertiveness. Here's the crucial insight. When Machiavelli wrote that it is much safer to be feared than loved, he wasn't advocating cruelty. He was observing that people are less likely to take advantage of those they believe might impose consequences. Think about it this way. Do manipulative colleagues dump last-minute work on the boss? Do friends who never repay loans try borrowing from people who firmly called them out before? Of course not. They selectively target those who've shown endless accommodation. The first step in protecting your kindness is recognizing this pattern. You've been targeted precisely because of your virtue, not despite it. For Maria, the awakening came during her 10th year of teaching. She'd always been the teacher who stayed latest, covered for colleagues, and took on the most challenging students. Yet when budget cuts came, she was among the first let go, while teachers who had strategically cultivated relationships with administrators kept their positions. I didn't understand, Maria told. I thought my work would speak for itself. This is the recognition moment, when we suddenly see the world through Machiavelli's eyes, and understand that performance and virtue alone aren't enough. This moment feels like waking from a dream, or perhaps entering a nightmare. Have you experienced this moment yet? That painful realization that the rules you've been playing by aren't the rules everyone else is using? Machiavelli experienced his recognition moment in a prison cell, tortured for his loyal service to a republic that no longer existed. From that darkest moment came his most profound insight. Virtue must be protected by strategy, or it will be crushed by those without such constraints. The Renaissance world Machiavelli inhabited wasn't so different from ours. The corporate boardroom has replaced the royal court. Social media has replaced town squares, and office politics has replaced actual politics. But the human dynamics remain strikingly similar. When Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are, he identified a truth that has only become more relevant in our age of carefully constructed personal brands and curated social media personas. Think of how we navigate modern life. We build reputations online and offline. We form strategic partnerships in careers and relationships. We still must distinguish genuine opportunities from exploitative ones. We still must protect our interests while trying to do good. The recognition moment is painful, but necessary. It's the moment when we stop being naive and start being strategic. Not to abandon our kindness, but to preserve it in a world that would otherwise exploit it to depletion. James was the most knowledgeable engineer in his company, the one everyone came to with difficult problems. Yet in meetings, he spoke softly, prefaced his ideas with, "I might be wrong, but," and never interrupted others. Meanwhile, his colleague David presented James's solutions confidently, as if they were his own, making direct eye contact with executives and taking credit for the insights. Guess who got promoted? This is the perception paradox. How you present yourself often matters more than your actual abilities or contributions. It's not fair, but pretending it isn't true won't help you navigate reality. Think about your own life. Have you ever watched someone less competent but more confident get opportunities you deserved? Have you ever had your ideas ignored until someone more assertive repeated them? Machiavelli understood the perception paradox centuries before modern psychology confirmed it. Men in general judge more by the eyes than by the hands, he wrote, meaning people evaluate you based on appearances rather than your actual deeds. Modern research proves he was right. Studies show that people who display confident body language are rated as more competent than those with identical qualifications, but humbler demeanor. One landmark study found that the perception of competence often outweighs actual competence in determining who gets hired and promoted. This creates a particular challenge for kind people, who often downplay their achievements, qualify their statements to avoid seeming arrogant, give credit to others while taking none themselves, speak less assertively than their less ethical counterparts. The cruel irony is that this humility, while virtuous, often prevents kind people from gaining the influence needed to actually do good in the world. What use is your compassion if you're never in a position to apply it meaningfully? Consider Eleanor Roosevelt's transformation. Initially a shy, insecure political wife, she consciously developed what her biographer called her public voice, a more authoritative presentation style that ultimately helped her become one of history's most influential humanitarian figures. Did this strategic self-presentation make her less authentic? No, it made her kindness more effective. The vital lesson here isn't to become an empty self-promoter, but to recognize that perception management isn't inherently manipulative. It's a necessary skill for ensuring your virtues actually have impact. To protect your kindness, you must learn to present it effectively. Speak with confidence when offering help. Take appropriate credit for your contributions. Ensure your boundaries are clearly communicated through both words and body language. Remember, if people perceive you as weak rather than kind, as a doormat rather than a good person, they will treat you accordingly, and your ability to do good in the world will be diminished. When Alex's business partner betrayed him, taking their biggest client and half their staff, Alex's immediate reaction was rage. But instead of lashing out, he took 3 days before responding. When he finally called a meeting with remaining staff, he was calm, focused, and strategic. "I was screaming inside," he later confided, "but I knew showing that would only make things worse." Within a year, Alex had rebuilt his company stronger than before. Meanwhile, his former partner's hastily assembled operation collapsed amid conflict and poor planning. When they ran into each other years later, Alex's former partner said something revealing. "I never thought you'd recover. You were always too nice." What his partner had mistaken for weakness was actually tremendous strength. The emotional self-mastery to feel deeply while choosing how and when to express those feelings. Think about your own emotional responses. When someone takes advantage of your kindness, do you immediately show hurt or anger? Do you find yourself reacting emotionally in ways that ultimately reduce your effectiveness? Machiavelli understood that emotional self-regulation is essential for anyone who wants to maintain power and influence, not because emotions are wrong, but because visible reactivity gives others a strategic advantage over you. Consider how differently people respond to controlled versus uncontrolled emotions. When you respond with visible hurt, they learn they can manipulate you through emotional pressure. When you explode in anger, they feel justified in dismissing you as unstable or overreacting. When you maintain composure, they must engage with your actual position rather than your emotions. This doesn't mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means developing what Machiavelli might call emotional fortezza, the ability to feel deeply while controlling how and when you express those feelings. Modern research confirms the advantage this provides. Studies show that emotional self-regulation is a stronger predictor of success than technical skill in most professional contexts. This is particularly relevant for kind people, who often experience emotions more intensely due to their empathetic nature. Abraham Lincoln demonstrated this principle during America's most divisive period, known for writing what he called hot letters, expressing his anger in messages he never sent. Lincoln processed emotions without letting them dictate his actions. His secretary described finding letters so scorching that the very paper seemed to burn, yet marked, "Never sent, too strong." Did this emotional discipline make Lincoln less authentic? No. It made him more effective at preserving the Union, while eventually ending slavery. His kindness and compassion, protected by strategic emotional management, changed history. The path to intelligent kindness requires developing this same capacity, feeling fully while expressing strategically. This isn't emotional suppression but strategic emotional expression, crucial for maintaining both kindness and effectiveness in a complex world. Men are less hesitant about harming someone who makes himself loved than someone who makes himself feared, Machiavelli observed, recognizing a fundamental truth about human psychology. We value what is scarce and often take for granted what is abundantly available. Think about your own relationships. Have you noticed that the people whose time and attention are hardest to get often receive the most respect? Have you found that those to whom you make yourself constantly available sometimes value you least? This creates a painful dilemma for kind people. The natural impulse to be constantly available often leads to being taken for granted, yet withdrawing feels selfish or manipulative. The solution isn't becoming cold or aloof, but developing what anthropologists call calculated distance, the strategic management of your accessibility to others. This isn't about playing games. It's about valuing yourself enough to create sustainable boundaries. Research confirms this counterintuitive principle. Studies show that people who maintain certain boundaries in relationships are actually perceived as having higher status and receive more respect than those who are indiscriminately available. This applies in friendships, romantic relationships, and professional contexts. Franklin D. Roosevelt, known for his warm public persona, carefully managed access to himself. His biographer describes how he compartmentalized relationships and information, never making himself too available to any one person or group. This strategic distance didn't diminish people's affection for him. It enhanced their respect. For genuinely kind individuals, strategic distance isn't about manipulation, but sustainability. Research from Stanford's Center for Compassion shows that maintaining boundaries is essential for preventing compassion fatigue, the exhaustion that comes from giving without limits. Consider these practical applications. Don't answer every message immediately, unless truly urgent. Schedule specific times for helping others rather than dropping everything. Be fully present when you do give your time, but limit its quantity. Allow others to miss you occasionally. Don't volunteer for every need that arises. The challenge is cultivating what we might call compassionate distance, caring deeply while maintaining boundaries that preserve your energy and increase the value of your engagement. This isn't selfishness, but strategic kindness, ensuring your generosity remains sustainable and appreciated. After being passed over for promotion again, David decided to change his approach. Instead of just working harder, he 1. Began documenting his achievements in weekly emails to his manager. 2. Practiced saying, "I need to check my schedule," instead of automatically saying yes. 3. Spoke up assertively in meetings while still treating others with respect. 4. Built strategic relationships with key decision-makers. 5. Learned to disagree professionally when necessary. 6 months later, he got the promotion. "I'm still the same person with the same values," he told me. "I just learned to present myself differently." This is the balanced way, maintaining your kindness, while adding the strategic elements necessary for that kindness to thrive and be recognized. It's not about becoming manipulative, but about ensuring your goodness isn't exploited or overlooked. Here are practical strategies you can implement immediately. Principled transparency. Be honest about your boundaries from the beginning. "I'd love to help with this project, but I can only dedicate 3 hours this week." Research shows clear boundary setting actually increases respect rather than diminishing it. Response flexibility. Adjust your approach based on who you're dealing with. Be generous with trustworthy friends while requiring reciprocity from those who've proven unreliable. One study found that successful people vary their interaction styles significantly depending on past experiences with individuals. Strategic positioning. Place yourself where your contributions will be recognized. Volunteer for visible projects. Connect your work to organizational priorities. Share achievements without arrogance. "I'm pleased our team's project came in under budget while exceeding targets." Selective vulnerability. Share personal information strategically rather than indiscriminately. Build deeper connections with proven allies while maintaining professional boundaries with those who've shown manipulative tendencies. Pattern recognition. Learn to identify warning signs of exploitation. Does someone only contact you when they need something? Do they reciprocate your generosity? Do they respect your time and boundaries? Adjusting your approach based on these patterns isn't cynical. It's wise. Deliberate discomfort. Practice small acts of assertiveness daily. Dispute an incorrect charge. Ask for what you deserve. Say no to an unreasonable request. Each small victory builds the confidence to protect your kindness in larger contexts. The path of intelligent kindness requires balance, combining genuine compassion with strategic awareness. This balance isn't about becoming Machiavellian in the negative sense. It's about ensuring your virtues survive and thrive in environments that might otherwise exploit them to extinction. Imagine a world where the kindest people weren't pushed aside, but rose to positions of influence, where strategic awareness protected compassion rather than replacing it, where Machiavelli's insights were used not to manipulate, but to ensure virtue could thrive. This isn't fantasy. It's entirely possible when we embrace the balanced approach that Machiavelli, properly understood, actually advocated. Remember, Machiavelli wasn't suggesting we abandon kindness. He was teaching us how to make kindness strong enough to survive in a challenging world. His insights, born from painful personal experience, offer a path to effectiveness without sacrificing ethics. The choice now lies before you. Will you continue as you have been, hoping the world will finally recognize and reward your goodness alone? Or will you add strategic awareness to your kindness, making it resilient enough to truly change the world? Intelligent kindness isn't just about protecting yourself, though it certainly does that. It's about becoming effective enough in your compassion that you can actually create the kinder world you've always envisioned. The true power of Machiavelli's insights isn't in teaching the cruel how to succeed. It's in teaching the kind how to survive, thrive, and ultimately transform the very environments that once exploited them. That transformation begins with you, today, as you take the first steps toward making your kindness not just good, but intelligent.